Greetings, world. Welcome to another MEN-talRollaDeK Live. Today's topic: how long are we going to ingest the lies? Have a special guest. I don't want to mess your name up. It's with Nelly Paul. You want or
No, some people it's actually Chanel.
oh, okay. You got the double L with the
Double
E.
L,
It's
yeah.
kind of throw off.
Yeah. So it's Chanel, yes.
Okay. How you doing, Queen?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm well. Can't complain. Another day in the life. You recently did a video that piqued my interest, and I wanted to have you on to share your experiences and the steps you're taking with finding out your lineage and your family lineage and so on and so forth, and why you wanted to take these steps and why you needed to find out, so on and so forth.
Okay.
If you care to share, where would you like to start?
No, I'll talk and then because I can go on and on and on. So you can like let me know when
It's
to
fine. It's
stop.
all about you. If I want to
When to
interject,
start talking. No, so the video. So what happened was I forgot when I posted that. Was it last week or something? I can't remember.
yeah.
Maybe last week because what happened was I had been introduced to a DNA website. And what the DNA website actually did, it was actually confirming everything that Black people who say that they are indigenous had been saying for a long time. And finally, the DNA actually proved it. So when I saw that, I said, oh my God, this is amazing. This is revolutionary. I have to post this. But how I got started and the information originally was about I forgot how long it was ago, but one of the first videos I saw on YouTube about it, it was Kerry Davis. And his name is the indigenous one on YouTube, and then it was a video by 1000 Go Ahead. And they were saying that African Americans ain't African. And that's like the first video I saw, and I said, hmm, I didn't know how I felt about it. I didn't think it was wrong necessarily, but I didn't really pay it too much attention. And then maybe some years later, I came back into the information, and then that's when I started actually researching to see if it was true or not. So I remember I asked my mom, what did she think about, us being from Africa or the slave trade? And she actually said that she didn't actually even believe it happened. She said she thought it was a lie that they told us to keep us confused so we wouldn't know where we were from. And I never actually asked my parents what they thought about our origins. So come to find out, some of our parents don't even believe it themselves. But we're all okay to be black anyway, if
it's
that makes
it's crazy you say that because like I'm not a fan of the word because I'm a big follower of Dane Calloway,
hmm
and he's been teaching this for years on top of years now about why we are not so-called black. And I've done my own research, and I've realized that they play with the English language,
hmm
um, Latin language, and so on and so forth. That they have books like, say, you get a entomology dictionary, and you look up the terminology black, it really stands for white, and white really stands for black, and it's
hmm
not really a race thing. It's has nothing to do with ethnicity, has everything to do with power,
yeah.
right? So the terminology black, bleak, pale, or bleach are colorless one. So it's like the
hmm
more we say these things, because whatever we speak out of our mouth, we create in the universe, the more we put ourselves back. To say you're black is to throw yourself black. Like, boom, I'm colorless. Oh, colorless life matters.
hmm
Every year we celebrate um what you call it like Thanksgiving, and I'm looking at our people like, fam, we're the Indians. where the Aboriginal Nijis and so on and so forth.
Mhm.
But we fail to understand that, and we want to be black. But if they go all the way back, there was a federal case where a European woman actually went to court fighting for the term black, identifying as black, and so on and so forth. But I feel like we're just ignorant to a lot of things that we're ignorant to, and we're just so stuck in our ways. We don't want to learn new things, and we coin the word black, so we think that's who we are, and so on and so forth. I'm like, yo, you don't match your car tires. You don't match my shirt. You don't match certain things. So why do you identify as this?
Mhm.
Is black even a culture?
No, I agree with you, and even because I know the black, depending on the language, to be pale, but it also could mean some other things like gloomy
Hmm.
or dark, and dark in a bad way, like, oh, it's just so, have you, like, evil. So that type of black. Because when you look up the word, I said, oh, wow. I said, all the definition for black, if it's outside of to become pale, then it's also a person is gloomy, is bad, is evil. And then, there's the white equals good and blah, 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 blah. So that's that too. And I'm like, oh, I'm like, yeah, so we're walking around calling ourselves this stuff. And it's like, that could be a part of why our behavior is the way it is.
Programming.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I mean, we can go deeper into it as well. Like, everything was created from black. There will be no light without that.
Darkness.
So if you speak
Mhm.
on a scientific term, black is powerful. But
Mhm.
within this culture, within the spectrum of law, it holds no power. That's why they can actually kill you
Mhm.
and get away with it. You be like, oh, there's nothing being done, but yet we keep marching and we keep doing all these things. And I'm like, fam, how long are we going to keep marching? How long are we going to keep complaining about the same thing before either we isolate ourselves or stand tall amongst ourselves? But if you don't know who you are, you'll stand for nothing. You
Mhm.
fall for every damn thing, basically.
Yeah. No,
So
you are.
So it's beautiful to know that there's like-minded people. That's why when you put your video up, I'm like, okay, I'm not the only crazy one out here in a good way.
No, no, it's actually a good thing because I actually think more people they agree. Like more people agree now than they would have agreed years ago. Like at least because I know the first video I saw was made like 9, 10 years ago. So more people, I forgot when Dane Calloway came on, but I know his videos, he gets a lot of followers. So that means even more people agree with the information now than they would have in the past. But when you think about it, we're actually late to the information because our grandparents, great grandparents never actually, well, I can't say never because maybe some people did. They actually never thought of themselves as Africans anyway,
Hmm.
or as blacks anyway. They, mm, so something like during the 60s, the black, yeah, something happened, but they never thought of themselves that way necessarily either.
But look at this though, Queen. Why would you be incorporated into believing you came from two continents, African American?
Hmm.
Like, really, that don't make sense. It's either you belong to one, but you can't belong to both. It's either
Yeah.
you're American and so on and so forth. So why are they so afraid of actually telling us who we really are? Is it because of the treaties that they're broken, the population of lands that they owed us, and all this money that they could never pay back, so on and
Hmm.
so forth? You
No,
know,
yeah, that's actually true, but it's like I think what happens is our people think they don't belong in America. So they have African, but you look at Africans and Africans look like us sometimes. So they say, oh, okay. They look at Africans as a group of black people. We look like black people. So, like, oh, yeah, that's our other homeland to give us a connection to it. But no, we're in our homeland here. And hopefully over years and years, they'll see that. But no, they would be out of a lot of money.
My elder stated this before. He said, "How can you go back to some place where your birth certificate is not even there? Your your biblical card is not even there. Like, why would you go back to something you have no education upon?" And believe it or not, like I love my African people,
Mhm,
but that term was coined by a European. That term is fairly new as well. But
mhm,
within the same breath, right? Everything that's within, say, Egypt and Africa is here. That's bigger. You got pyramids. You got different forms of history that is more grand here than it is in Egypt.
mhm.
And you got a lot of so-called Africans that really don't like Americans.
Yeah,
So it's a contradiction within the same breath if you use common sense, but the ignorance is like it's real.
no. Yeah, we have civilizations here in America that are older than what they have in Africa.
Absolutely. So what drew you into digging? Was it the video that you ingested, or is it curiosity?
Well, I watched the video, and one of the videos I saw, like, it was kind of, I would call it ignorant more, but I think I see where he was going with it. So, what he said was, well, if we're Africans, how come they can't grow hair like us? And I looked at that, I'm like, I think I see where he was getting at, but I thought that was kind of, so I was like, it could be true, but I dismissed it. But what made me go back and look at it was Africans themselves. I saw an African, I used to be on a website, like it was like a forum, and I saw an African say that they didn't actually know where the black people came from in America. I was like, huh? She's like, yeah, they were talking, they said that they didn't actually know where the black people in America came from. That they didn't actually know. They thought they don't know. They learned about the slave trade themselves, but she was like, yeah, she didn't know where we came from exactly. So I'm like, oh, wait a minute. So you have Africans themselves who they don't actually know you're them anyway. They were taught you were them like how we were taught we were them.
Hmm. That's crazy because like I've had a few African friends, and like on their documentation the status was white. It didn't label as black and so on and so forth. Like it was just white.
Mm-hmm.
And the crazy thing, like the beautiful thing about Dane Calloway was he actually have a doc where he was telling us that slavery was actually done in reverse, where if there were millions of people already here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why would you have to bring people from Africa to here? But in other words, you would actually disperse them from here because they were in the millions and set them up all around the world, such as the um, the Jamaica, the Trinidad and Tobago, the Africa, and so on and so forth. And the thing with the hair, if you put, some would say, oh, because the climate is a lot more hotter and so on and so forth. So that's why the texture of the hair is the way it is, so on and so forth. But it just didn't make sense. Like if you go back and look at even the voyage, you know, you have military that have metal vessels that can't even go through the Atlantic when there's certain things happening because it will get destroyed based on currents and so on and so forth. But how do you take a wooden vessel with 100 thousands of slaves? What is the crew member like? How do you feed people? How long would your voyage be? How much food would you need? So common sense will have you question these things to an extent and realize like, yo, this shit don't make sense. And Columbus was really a mercenary.
Yeah, like when like the slave voyages website, so about the people on the boats and everything like that. So there's a website and you may have seen it, it's called Slave Voyages, where they say that they documented pretty much all of the what they might call a slave voyage. But if you read the fine print on that website, they actually say they don't know what's a slave voyage and what's not a slave voyage.
It's like Wikipedia. Anybody could go in and adjust the information.
Well, it's done by Emory, but what it is like, let's say you have a ship, I don't know, somebody named Captain John. He's from Portugal and they're going to, I don't know, Cuba. That might be all it says, was that Captain John from Portugal went to Cuba. That's it. What they've done though is sometimes there's people on the boats, but sometimes there's not. So they're telling you that all of these voyages, they don't know what they are, but they've decided to call them all slave voyages anyway. And it's actually on the website that they actually did this. So let's say Captain John Smith went to Jamaica and with 200 people. Let's say another boat went to Jamaica and there was no numbers. They're going to add that 200 to the other voyage because that's how they did it. So when you go on there and you look at those numbers, you're like, "Oh my god, that's a lot of people." Well, no, actually it isn't because they're fudging those numbers.
Yeah, I mean they're fudging numbers now.
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
so I mean you got to look at it. Like he Calloway also exposed that. He exposed that and but the crazy thing is you can go to there's certain websites you can go to like forgot the actual terminology where you can actually find these doc reports
Mhm.
basically especially like within the UK and it will show you that there are things that they speak of that is inaccurate and is not accurate based on what they're saying. Like even the terminology African American, they never actually did a full DNA test upon you. It's kind of like the census came to your home and they assume your ethnicity was African American. You know,
Mhm.
and that a lot of these numbers and historical documents they claim is a guesstimation. Like they don't have no real facts.
Mhm.
And people now is just so drawn to opinions and opinions are what facts is now and it's just pure lie.
Yeah, yeah. It's also the TV. So like when you watch TV and let's say you watch a slave movie, then you watch another slave movie, and then you watch another slave movie and you never actually look at any documents, you would just say, and they're calling it, what's it, nonfiction, they're calling it facts. So if you just watch TV all the time, you would actually think that's true and you would feel no need to look at any documents. If
Yeah,
you
like
actually go look at documents, some of what they say, like in my genealogy, I have relatives who are from Europe who are slaves, and they say so in the document. It actually says that they have masters, that they are working on a plantation, and they have masters. Like I've seen an indentured servant contract. So how they tell you that slaves can get married, that's a part of the contract. It tells you can't get married, you're not supposed to gamble, you're not supposed to drink, da 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 da. You're only supposed to work for your master. So I've actually seen these documents. Europeans early on were more on plantations. They were on plantations in Europe. I think the British set up plantations in Ireland, probably even Scotland, but I know they did it in Ireland, and then some of those people came over here and worked on plantations. Um, you can't just Europeans couldn't just travel like we think, oh, Johnny in Scotland's just gonna get on a boat and he's just gonna come over here. No, he can't do that. You have to have permission. Like Europeans even had to apply to be freedmen themselves. Like not that they're slaves, but they can't conduct business. They have to work under somebody in a contract 7 years. Then if they're free, then they can be a freedman, then they can be free to travel. So it's like your average European cannot have you as a slave because for one, they don't have enough resources to do it and they can't come on boats over here anyway. The European population rose later on through immigration. So They
And
couldn't even, yeah.
the government gave them these things, like, because
Hmm.
we were masters, we had slaves. I've done a show on here, and my elder was speaking, and he broke it down. I think the guy is called April Morris or something like that. Where it shows that so-called blacks had slaves, and that was the reason why they were in the war, because they were funding the South, because they didn't want to lose certain privileges. You get what I'm saying? And what the government did was kind of like what they do now in a more heightened way, is like they had these Europeans come and they became indigent servants, but they made it harder on the farmers, which was us, to maintain the farms, to maintain the crops and so on. By they do the inflation prices, the seeds, and so on and so forth,
Hmm.
not telling us that this European on the farm had the opportunity within 30 days to take that farm over and have us in return working and cultivating that farm. So they screwed us in a lot of the treaties.
Trickery, yeah.
Yeah, and that's what they still do to this day with wordings, because like the way me and you speak naturally is not how they speak, and you can see that if you get a Black Law dictionary. They speak completely different. Like I always say this to my friends, like, yo, minority really means that you're a child, right? And majority really means you came into adulthood to take shape of your estate.
Hmm.
There's like, no, minority means, I don't make as much as the 1%. No, it clearly says this in the Black Law Dictionary, so on and so forth. So when they say you cannot read, it's not that you can't reflect the words. It's that they change the wording so you will not recognize these things. Kind of like the terminology black,
They have a different language
Exactly.
of what their words mean. Hmm.
Exactly. You know, we just fail to see what it really is, Queen, because we are so programmed. But the beauty of what's been transpiring these couple years or season is that most of the younger generation are saying, yo, hell no, it's time. Like, no, this is done. We're not gonna do this. We're not gonna follow suit. We're not gonna, you
Hmm.
know follow these BS laws, everything that you got in documentation and so on and so forth. We're gonna make our own way and create our own, and so on and so forth. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's
you know
more language. When someone's speaking a language that you don't understand and you weren't raised speaking the language, there'll be a lot of stuff that you miss. And if you
but
don't even write in their language, or you might write in the language, it depends. Because if you're people, you might be a European.
you're right, because half of my family is actually European. Like I can't ever, like, you go online and look up their crest right now, and they be like white as chalk. You'd be like, what the hell?
Hmm.
So I know my mom have a percentage of white in her. But the things that we don't look at is, like, even if you don't do your research,
Hmm.
there's just some things you naturally feel within you, like your body, your intuition just tell you, like, yo, there's something's not right. It's not right. Like, if you're supposed to be the bottom of the totem pole, like, why does these people spend billions of dollars to make sure you stay down? Gentrification, redlining, poisoning your food, man, like educating your kids and so on and so forth. But within the same breath, we're also cancer to ourselves, because they stated that we brought civilization to them. So the blueprint they're actually utilizing belongs to us,
Hmm.
right? So this blueprint we gave them is harming us.
Hmm. So what that really is like I said, is words. You don't know, like if you think like with the DNA, when I saw the DNA, and it's really a historical time frame. So if, let's say, you think of yourself, we say that we're black, we're African, well, whatever, we're black, we're African, whatever. And then you're looking at these people and your DNA in these groups, there's basically no people that you can say are even black. how they would tell you they were, or even African at all. So when you have civilizations and like you hear the word a Roman, you don't think of yourself as a Roman. So you might not even know that that was you. If you hear the term um, a Mongol, you don't think that that was you. So it's like you never think of yourself as belonging to any civilization anyway, because you just think of yourself as a slave.
And that's the thing, and that's a question, that primary question I keep asking, right? They claim it's been over 400 years ago, when in actuality it's not. If you look at the actual how long the United States been active, it's really more around 200 plus going into it, right? If you've never been on a plantation, if you've never picking cotton, what makes you a slave? The job you're doing today or the mentality?
Hmm. It would, like, how would I explain it? Like, so it's okay. So I'll say, so it's black people all over the Americas, everywhere. So everywhere from Canada all the way down to Argentina. It's black people in Africa, obviously. It's black people in Asia. It was probably more black people in Europe, but not as much anymore. And we're the only black population who sees themselves as slaves
Hmm.
or who sees themselves as not belonging where they are. So you'll go to Australia, you'll look at them and you'll say, oh, these the indigenous Australians. You can go to Indonesia, Malaysia, India, probably even some places in China and Japan, and it's black people, and you think that that's where they belong. But when we look at ourselves, we're like, oh, we're in America, but we got here because some Europeans decided to bring us over here on a boat. So we're it's basically just indoctrination. So
Yeah, that
you just can't think we can't think of ourselves as not being anything other than a slave.
yeah, that don't make no damn sense. Like, like the question I asked earlier, like, do you know how expensive that voyage would have been? Where was the food coming from?
Hmm.
And what it was like 20 y'all to 100,000. So 100,000 so-called Negroes allowed you to chain them up in a boat, feces and all of that within the bottom of the boat, urine and so on and so forth. Half, if they were the resource, half of the resource would have died before it reached here.
Well, yeah, that was actually my point earlier that a typical I was just like a typical European or a white man, whatever, did not have the resources to do any of that. That would have had to come from the crown or their merchant class, but that doesn't include all Europeans. It doesn't include most of them because most of them are actually a part of the peasant class. And like you said about the numbers, if I'm two white men, how can two white men go into Africa or anywhere really and just snatch? Because they said it was how do you can't do that? And if you're gonna go into Africa and do that, you actually need an army. So Europeans would have had to bring armies into Africa to basically kill them, but then they would have had to get killed in return because you can't just go in and just snatch up everybody's people and bring them over here. That, but we don't think about it.
For those of them, so for those that think, they would say their rebuttal would be, but we sold ourselves. Okay. If there's more people, if there's more of us, and there might be like a couple chiefs and so on and so forth, like, yeah, they sold us, but we the people stand out more. How far do you think that would go? So it really is common sense wise, it doesn't make sense, but like the documentation contradict themselves. Like, the more you dig deeper, the more you start to figure out like most of this is like fictions, because like I said, I have African friends that said the way they learned of slavery was through television. You get what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And then people don't pay attention to, like, so-called slavery was recent. You remember you remember that queen that the was the Secret Service or the FBI had to protect to go to school or whatever. She's only 65.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? Like the government actually had to send people in to protect her from so-called whites harming her and her mom, so they would take her to school. She's in her 60s now. So all of that is fairly new.
I
But it
actually, yeah.
but is it being told the way you read in books? I feel like these books in places are actually messing up your mindset to have you believe you're something when you're not, because we're really powerful people.
Yeah, it actually is recent, but I don't know what happened. So when I see slave like a slave, like if you look at the census and I have census records, people who are on plantations are considered employed by the person who would be their master.
Indigent servants.
Yeah, they're considered employees. And the record actually says they're employees. Now, I've seen records of people in my family who had slaves, but they didn't get any until the 1800s.
Mm,
And I think the first record I saw of someone having a slave, they had one slave, and it was in 1810. And about the time 1850 came, they didn't have any anymore. And the 1850, I think that's the start of the slave schedules,
mm.
but some of them didn't have any about the time 1850 happened. So there's something that happened probably in the 1800s, and maybe where maybe more people would have been classified as slaves. But from what I'm seeing, a lot of the slave history is at least it happened much later than it seems. Probably the 1800s. So people being enslaved from the 1600s on, it doesn't look like it's true. If that was true, it's probably not you. It may have been a European. That would have been the people who would have been enslaved that long.
Yeah, it's confusing. But today society, right?
Hmm.
Um okay, the the gentleman name is William Ellison.
Okay.
He had over probably hundreds of Europeans actually working for him within the South, because
Mhm.
he funded the actual war against the North.
Mhm.
You know, yeah. So it's funny. The more you dig, the more you start to find out, like, yo, your stories are not added up. And then there's Dan Calloway, that he's genuinely finding these information out. He's spending the $20,000 on these books and that has the truth, and so on and so forth. And then a great way, I know you mentioned DNA earlier, but a great way to find this out is talking to your grandparents. Like, get their death certificates, get their certificates, and have these conversations with them, because if they're still around, they knew these things.
Mhm.
They have to encounter these things. You know what I'm saying? So why me, as a young Aboriginal man, would think I'm a slave when I've never went through that form of hardship?
Mhm. Now, there is something, well, how do I say it? Because if what they said occurred, even if it didn't happen to you, you do have the right to seek what restitution from them. But you can't get anything if what you say didn't actually happen, which is why they lie.
Yeah,
Because they're on a land that they don't really belong on. And there's more people whose this is not their land, but they're on it anyway. And you a foreigner too.
$5 Indians.
Well, yeah, but a lot of those people that would be in these tribes that are white got that way. A lot of them got that way via mixing with you.
It's not just that. You got to look. In order for you to be overthrown, the government also had to step in. They changed a lot of amendments and laws as
Hmm.
well, and gave these people the right. The reason why they call them $5 Indian, because they actually bought into the government actually telling, they paid to become that.
Mhm.
So now you have them running around thinking like, "Yo, I'm original." You're not original because you still got beef with the sun. You
Yeah, a
know?
lot of no, yeah, a lot of those people, yeah, some of those white people, they're in those tribes fake, and then they're also in those tribes via mixing with blacker people. But the
Correct.
blacker people are not there anymore because all the rest of the stuff that happened. So if they were saying that they were Indians and you're saying that you're a slave, well, they're gonna be the Indian and now you're the slave now. And now because they've actually set up these tribes and then they have these different ways that you can get in the tribe now. So if your people, so like we have, I have records of our people being Cherokee Indians,
Hmm.
but they're not on the specific records that they're asking for.
Hmm.
So if your people, so like let's say 1910, your people have to be on the 1910 county census classified as an Indian. If your people left in the 1900s and went to another state, even though they're classified as Indians, it's too late. So that's another thing. People move into different areas, and then if you move away from the tribe and they started coming up with all that stuff, it's too late. And when you think about it, it happened so late. It's like you have a Indian census in 1910 after all that stuff happened to determine who can be an Indian and who can't. And then from what I'm seeing, some people probably not even from where they think they're from. You might not even have been anywhere in the United States until recently if you're from the United States. Your people may have been somewhere out west in California. And about the time the murders happen, the genocides happen, they come back to Georgia for some reason. They're Indians, but they won't be on that census.
It's the wordings as well because Indian now really applies to like these guys you would see in like your local gas stations and so on and so forth. That's coined to them. Aboriginal Niji is a different terminology that applies to everyone that believes they're so-called black,
Hmm.
especially within the Americas.
Right. So an American Indian is a Native American, kind of
Yeah,
technically,
yeah.
legally.
Yeah, because these terms change. If you go back and look at the terms they used to call you, the mulatto, the Native American Indian, then they start calling you colored, then they start calling you black. Now it's African American, and so
Hmm.
on and so forth. They've been playing and contradicting these information for a minute now. You know what I'm saying? And like even with the DNA, like you got to question that because you got silly websites like ancestry.com. Like, fam, you cannot take a point of my blood and then tell me later, oh, you got European in you and you got African. What dead body or what body did you actually conjoined it to actually get that information? No, you're just in the lab playing like scramble hats in the paper telling you lying to people because
Hmm.
they've been called out as well, but you can't sue them because they signed a certain
It's
documentation.
entertainment. Yeah. So that is actually true. So what it is, and then I'm not a science person, so I can't say exactly like what they're actually how they're actually doing it specifically when they go in the lab. But if you go take like a typical 23andMe or an ancestry test, the results you get back will probably be deceptive if you don't know any better. So how do I say it? So 23andMe, and I don't know if you've done one, but if you do a 23andMe, they actually will give you a timeline because a DNA test is actually supposed to be a timeline of a point of origin. And they'll tell you when they think each person entered into your lineage. For most black people that I've seen, the oldest DNA is actually from America. If it's not from America, then it's actually from Asia. And then if it's not an Asian or an American, then it's a Scandinavian. Those are Vikings. And if it's not them, then it will be the San people of South Africa. But what it actually is like the sequencing.com. That's a different kind of website because what they do is compare you to different populations around the world. So it's not just you're Nigerian. Now it's you may have some DNA from this group of Indians. And when I say Indians, I mean East Indians. This group of East Indians, this group of East Indians, this group of Polynesians, Hawaiians, Europeans, da da da. And what it actually is a timeline. So, like if you took a regular DNA test, I don't know, it'll probably tell you that, I don't know, you might be 70 to 80% African, the rest European, a little bit Asian, right? And that's not technically wrong, but the African part came in recent times because our people went over to Africa in the 1800s and mixed in with Africans. And now a lot of those Africans are walking around with our DNA.
It's it's deep. It's really deep, and it's like the further you dig, it's like on the more unreal it feels, the more unreal it
Mhm.
becomes, because once you find this information out and you aim to bring it to your people, it's like the ignorance takes over and they're looking at you like, yo, you're twisted. Like the family falls out over this, arguments brew and so on and so forth. But the thing for me, like, even my mom, like, I get on her, I'm like, yo, stop listening to everything you watch on TV. Stop
Yeah,
ingesting it. It's not true. It's not true.
it's
She's
not
like,
true.
and she's like, yes, it is. And I'm like, all right, ma. It gets me heated sometimes, but I'm like, you know what? I can't change you. I just have to walk the way I need to walk, and then
Mhm.
maybe within the way I walk, you will actually gravitate to that eventually. But it's
Yeah,
hard trying to convince your reflection that, oh, fam, listen, you're not African American. Like you,
you would have to you would have to find something, I don't know, that your mom would, I don't know how to say it, see to make the light bulb go off. That said, oh, for some people it's DNA, for some people it's pictures, for some people it's records. But she might come around because nowadays my mom told me that one of her friends in church let her know, I'm not black, I'm an Indian.
yeah,
So it's people, they're like, yeah, she was talking to her other friend, and she said her friend was telling her daughters, hey, you guys need to stop believing that. You need to research your people. You not who they say you are. So a lot of people are catching on. So maybe for your mom, it might, I don't know. She might, you never know. Maybe one might take a minute, a couple of years, she might turn around and say, you know what, you are right. Something might
yeah.
just, she might see something and it might click, and she's like, you know what, you're right.
Hopefully one day I have the utmost faith. I want to use that word, but in that. So, hopefully.
Though
Um
she really, you just never know. She really
but,
might come around.
but the crazy thing about like my family, like as aboriginal as you see me, the carbon that's within my skin, my
Hmm.
mom, my mom is way lighter than me. And like
Hmm.
if you pay attention to her dad and so on and so forth, you could tell that, he has European blood in him and so on.
Hmm.
Because like if you look up the family crest, it goes back to Viking eras.
Hmm.
So a lot of distant family, like the family is so big, you look at them, they're Europeans.
Yeah.
So and cause I'm from Jamaica, so there's East Indian and West Indians down there. So because all like a lot of different variations of people came to
Came to the
Jamaica. Like
country.
even now, you got Chinese down there talking Jamaican, and so on and so forth. So yeah, it's difficult. But the question I have for you, Queen, um, ingesting this information, what does it do for you as an Aboriginal woman going forward?
Hmm. Well, what it does, or the main thing of it, how I see it, is it actually allows people to, or I'll say me, put themselves in different places. How do I say it? You can now connect yourself to a world history. So you can now see yourself
Excuse me.
in a different way. So that's what it actually does. So what I plan on doing is later on, I plan on doing something for my family and connecting a history book
Mm, that's powerful.
for a point of, and I don't mean like for here, I mean period. Because like I said, the DNA is actually true, but it's actually historical. So like I said, if you people of India, the Ottoman Islanders, you've probably seen them. They're black, they're from India. Allegedly, they actually populated Brazil. There was some of them that populated Brazil. That actually happened, and some of those tribes now carry DNA from those people. We actually have the DNA from those people in our genetics.
Interesting.
You have the genetics of people from, like Hawaii, Polynesia. When they're talking about those people populating those lands, so they came out of Polynesia, went to Hawaii, they went to Easter Island. Easter Island is off the coast of Chile. But they're Polynesians. When they're talking about this, they're actually talking about you. And yeah, that comment is actually true. That's why a lot of our people, when they do a DNA test, they get Africans. And that's actually in the DNA. Like I went through all of like the thousands of populations we connect to. Africans just came sometime just recent because we just went all over there and mixed with them under the colonial powers. But back to what I was saying, when they're talking about these migrations, they're talking about your people because you're actually an ancient people. So those people that left India and went into Brazil, they're talking about your people. Those people that went, even the Siberians and Russians, they're talking about your people. Like that's actually you that they're talking about. Those people who what those I don't know what to call them. Guess you call them Moors and people from Morocco and North Africa. That's actually you, like over time, over the course of thousands of years. So what this information does is it puts you in a world history. So not just Africa, because we actually do match. Because on one website is My True Ancestry. There's a certain Egyptian mummy, and I forgot which one it is, but we actually match to Egyptians. You match to ancient Ethiopians.
But I
You
mean,
match.
I'm sorry. Egypt is still Africa.
Right.
Asia is still Africa. Europe is still connected to Africa. All these places are still connected to Africa. It's just that the Caucasian came and separate them on paper. Because like even in some of the Moorish treaties that they signed in America, technically America is Morocco.
Well, Moroccans are old people. Moroccans were actually here for a long time, but all
Yeah,
Americans aren't Moroccans.
but technically, based on the treaties and stuff that they signed, America is actually Morocco on documentation. So you speak to like true Moors. I forgot the specific elbe that it is, but he teaches this, right?
No, it's actually true. But if my people are in Brazil, we're not underneath you because we have our own trees.
I understand that because there were and technically under their terms, it was two actual different places. It was I think it was the east and the west, and to the west it was like Spanish. There was a Spanish queen that ruled that area basically, and there was the Moors. So like if you go back and you read into like the well damn what's they called the Portuguese, like
Hmm.
you read their information, you find out more of who really run what area and how they ran it and how they divided it before a certain European or Caucasian came into play.
No, it's
It
true.
it started dividing these lands and so on and so forth. Because as much as they like to talk, California is still a part of that ruling of the Spanish people. But they like to say Cali is still a part of America. which is, yeah, it's backwards. They play with documentation and so on and so forth.
Mhm.
What, the only two went to two countries in West Africa? What about the East African countries?
I
That
don't know
I'm
what
not
that
familiar
is.
with. That I'm not familiar. You might have to ask that question a little bit more.
You only went to two countries. You mean what? Sierra Leone and Liberia and Nigeria and the Ivory Coast and the Gambia? Because our people went all over there, even South Africa. If you mean where would the East African connection come from?
You said Egyptians are
Egyptians are
Kenyans and
Kenyans and
Ugandans and
Ugandans and
Sudanese and
Sudanese
East
and East
Africans.
Africans. Right?
Interesting.
I'm trying to read that. Egyptians are Kenyans and Ugandans and Sudanese and East Africans today. Hmm. You actually have DNA from there,
But
but that came earlier though.
you're speaking of the DNAs. How are they keeping these DNAs
Hmm. It's
intact?
actually more population related, not how, because from what I'm seeing, and I'm going to put it together, it's actually true. So the stuff that they, like if you actually did it yourself, or if you know somebody who would and you tell them to upload it and start on a timeline, all of that DNA should actually connect and it should give you a story. So
So
we have DNA from Russians. Our people went to Russia. We have Soviet Germans in our, like, even if you don't, like, if you don't even look at percentages, like, don't even look at percentages. When you do a DNA test, it's supposed to tell you about your relationships with your family members. So I might have a family member that says they went to Czechoslovakia. I have people who list their point of origin as Czechoslovakia and Russia. So let's say you don't believe the percentages, and I don't believe it either. And they actually did go to the Gambia and they did go to the Ivory Coast. And I have history on that I posted on my page, and they did go there. And they created Creole populations in those African nations. So they actually did. That Sierra Leone, that Gambia, that Ivory Coast, Nigeria, all of that, they actually went over there. And that's actually documented. So they actually did, but we never knew that they went over there. But back to the percentages. You don't even have to pay attention to that. Let's say someone's telling you you're an African from Nigeria. When you take a DNA test, it's supposed to match you to your people, your family. Don't even worry about the percentages. You might notice you see no Africans, but you might see some people who say they're from the Philippines. You might see some people who say they're from Russia. You might do share their DNA though.
that's the
Pretty, I
thing that's
actually do.
confusing.
I
That's the
actually
thing.
share their
That's
DNA.
the thing that's confusing to me, because if you don't have the records of a death certificate and so on, and because the DNA terminology is, how old is that? It's recent. Like, it's old, but it's recent, right? We never used
Hmm.
those terminologies before.
No.
If I haven't gave my blood,
Hmm.
right? How
Hmm.
can you how can you match me up with somebody else in Ethiopia or Sierra Leone or Ghana and so on and so forth? I didn't give you my blood, or there is no death certificate or birth certificate identifying me with these places. So how do you
It's
know,
old because
or
see,
why would you
there's
say
really no
that?
such thing as time if
Yeah,
you
because
think about it. Because
yeah,
how do
because
they, like, for all we know, what's this, February? They told us it was February. There's no such thing as February in the world.
they changed those. They created the yeah they because I
I
have a
do.
I have an elder that pretty much insinuate we've been here for billions of years, basically. So and that's a
That's
fact
true.
based on
Hmm.
the information he actually
Yeah,
he is given. You
I
know,
agree.
they changed a lot, calendar and so on and so forth. Like, yeah, they changed a lot. It's supposed to be
Yeah.
13 months, and what
So
the season
time,
tells
yeah.
you. Season tells you we're a seasonal people, basically. It
Hmm.
nature tells you that. You
Yeah,
know,
no, you're right. There is no time technically. But I do want to answer this guy's question. I don't know how long this is supposed to go on. He says, I'm talking about Ethiopia, Somalia, Kenya. You don't share DNA with them. We actually do. See, this is what I mean by tests are different and they do different things and they whatever, whatever. How it works is that this Ethiopia, Somalia, Kenya is actually further back in someone's ancestries. What I mean by a timeline. You can actually tell when Europeans start going into Africa in the DNA. We can actually tell. And the people of Ethiopia is there, Somalia is there, and Kenya is there. So is North Africa. The Italians are there, the Spanish are there. I think the Portuguese are North Africans. Um, I think he's Ethiopian. There was a guy who looked at my results and he said, "Oh, those people are slaves." And what he was talking about was the Slavs, because the Slavs are in there. So if you've ever said, "Oh, the North Africans had Slavic people enslaved," that's actually in the DNA. And what did they call him? What word did he use? I don't know. I think it's Salabia, don't know, but he said, "Oh, those are Slavic slaves that we had as that's actually facts and that's in the DNA." So if you he looked, he said, "Oh, those are slaves, the Slavics. It's actually in the DNA." And you can tell because the North Africans start coming in, and then those Eastern Europeans and the Jews start coming in. So this actually a timeline.
So,
So
so you're saying basically, if you may look for certain information, but due to how old that information is, it might not add up to that current information that's given. Basically, is that the way you're putting it? Like, say for instance, the Gambians are say the Gambians are like 6 million years old, and the Africans might be, 4. You might have to search further back to gravitate to that population's DNA versus the Africans because you're missing like what 2 years? Is that what
mm,
you're saying?
no, I'm not sure if I understand how you're asking it.
Okay, so what I'm saying is, say for
Mhm,
instance, right? Like this term American
mhm,
started probably what, the 60s or whatever, like the corporation, how they created it, blah, 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 whatever, right?
mhm.
Say, but yet I was Aboriginal
Mhm.
200 years ago. You cannot
Okay.
search for the information within the 60s to get my information because my information is a lot older than the information of the 60s. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay. I think yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I think I got it. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. So, for people that's interested
Mhm.
and are willing to say not take the Dane Calloway route, because I feel like you guys are doing the same thing. I don't know how in depth you are, but he goes really hard. Like he
Mhm.
goes deep. You can look into him as well, or I'm pretty sure you're familiar with him.
Yeah, I heard of Dan Calloway. The first person I heard of was Kerry Davis. He made videos before Dan Calloway. So about the time Dan Calloway came along, I had already found my records. I think one of the people I heard stress genealogy so much was Phoenix Moon, but I don't know if you heard of Phoenix Moon or not. Um, like I'm not trying to get into no drama kazoo, but once I started looking at my records about the time that he came on, I had actually found some of my people um, matching to Indian populations in America. So I'd actually already found that.
Okay.
You do have outside people coming into your country, but they have been mixed in with Africans already.
That's how they're continuing their lineage. Like even right now, they're more going to put so-called blacks with so-called whites because they want to survive. This is all about survival. They know who has the more prominent DNA. They know who is stronger. They know who's the original man. So therefore, their aim is to, if not eliminate us,
Mhm.
is to migrate with us so they can continue their population. So
Mhm.
Sar Sar is a great debater. He likes
No,
doing
that's
that.
why I love DNA because there's just no debates. That's why I
Just
love
like doing
it
that. So
because
how can
it ends everything because it's all facts.
so how can people reach out to you if they would like to find out more about what you're into and how you do it and how you gain this information.
hmm Just my Facebook. I only actually have a Facebook. I might get something else later. So it's just my Chanel Paul on Facebook if they are interested. But I would recommend anyone start out talking to their family first. That's
Okay.
always first.
Okay. It's my pleasure to have you on. I'm sorry for the mix up earlier. Basically coming together to actually formulate the time to actually get this done.
hmm I'm
Um,
sorry. I'm so sorry. You keep putting. I would have said you're so right. And you know what? The DNA has Italians in it with Ethiopians. It's true. It actually had. You can tell when Italians occupy East Africa in the DNA. You can tell because it's there. I just had to say that. But the Ethiopians are there before the Italians because they show up with another population. But that's another lineage. But yes, you can tell with DNA too. Sorry about that.
no,
I just
you're
had to
fine.
say
You're
that
fine.
because you put the
You're
comment there.
no, you're fine. You're fine. I actually put it up just so you can see it. You're fine.
Okay,
Um,
yeah, because I posted that on my page, absolutely, and I was like, that's Italian occupation, and it's in the DNA.
it's my pleasure to have you, Queen. You're a friend of the show. You can come on anytime you want. We actually do lives normally Thursdays through Fridays. As of lately, I've been kind of slacking, busy with work and so on. But I'm gonna become more consistent than ever because I have so much material on YouTube. It's ridiculous, but I've been slacking as of lately. Thank you for joining us. To everyone on MEN-talRollaDeK platform, thank you for actually watching. Thank you, SAR, for actually placing the comments and participating as usual. And here goes another one. Um,
No, they weren't. They sure
um,
weren't. But I don't want to get into it. But you're
um,
so right, though. That's why it's over there. Because our African Americans went over there. Them Black Nova Scotians went over there. Them Cubans went over there. Probably some Mexicans went over there, but they went over there as the Spanish.
for those of you that would like to participate in the show, please send me a friend request on Facebook and like, subscribe, and follow on YouTube. Don't forget to hit the notification bell. Twitter at MEN-talRollaDeK, Twitch at MEN-talRollaDeK. And I have great news. I just started a podcast on Anchor, so that's live now on Spotify and Apple Music. You can catch the MEN-talRollaDeK podcast. So don't forget to share and tell a friend and tell a friend. And to all I say, prosperity and elevation and love you first. Yes.
Absolutely.
And stand tall. Peace.
Thanks for having me.
No problem.